Good morning, guys. Just want to come on here and do a quick review and share how last week's outlook played out. As you can see here, we created this daily SIBI that I called out last week, and I was looking for 50-50 price action favoring shorts. My line in the sand was this SIBI and a close above to seek these highs. However, if we use this internal range, then I said we're going to seek this external range low, and that's ended up what happening. And as you can see here, I graded the fair value gap. You can use 50% and 0.75 and 0.25 to grade the fair value gap. You can see how the bodies and the wicks kind of respect these levels here. I'll go to the daily chart. See the body on Tuesday closing below 50% of the fair value gap, which is a bearish signature showing that premium arrays are being respected. And then you can see a wick that touches the upper quadrant. And then Wednesday's close, we open at the midpoint, bump up a little bit, almost touching the 0.75 upper quadrant once again. And then we close, respecting the fair value gap Wednesday, setting the stage for Tuesday high of the week. And then Thursday, open, wick into the lower quadrant one more time. And then we seek this daily sell side here. Thursday almost goes down into the sell side here. And then Friday, open, almost touch the close on Thursday, and then continues lower, seeking the external range that I called out last week. I'm not going to do an outlook at the end of this video. I'll just do it right now. So since bearish PD arrays are being respected, we have this bearish suspension block here. Suspension block is when we have a volume imbalance on the upper end of a SIBI, or bullish, we have this lower volume imbalance on a BISI. So that's all a suspension block is. It's a fair value gap with a volume imbalance on the lower end. So we have this nice short suspension block here. If I turn on 60-day IPTA, we're going to start seeking, I believe this is the quarterly shift. We're going to start seeking lower prices, all these discount arrays. We have a bunch of internal range down here untouched and unbalanced that the market might want to seek. We had a long spring consolidation, and this could be the distribution of the year until fall. So we'll see. And then for a lower target from here, if we respect this bearish SIBI, then I want to see it touch this external range low, or if we continue to make lower lows before touching this suspension block. And then a lower objective beyond that would be this untouched daily internal range, which is also a suspension block here. And then you can grade these. So how we close around these levels will give me a really nice bias going into this week. Obviously, if we stay below the midpoint here and close lower, that's bearish to me. If we start to close above the midpoint on this, then maybe we'll have a shift in structure and seek all-time highs. And then if we go lower into this daily internal that I'm looking for, how far can it go? Well, upper quadrant, midpoint, and then if we get below that, then obviously this sell side here, and these internal ranges will be in sight. So that's the outlook. Just gonna get it out the way. Now I'm going to draw the levels that I called out last week, and we'll review this week real quick. So last week I called out this internal range, but however I watched some videos this week and ICT showed how to grade fair value gaps and what kind of signatures you can see in that. So I'm going to start doing that. It seems to give you some extra context on the daily closes, so why not? So before I get into the hourly chart, I'll bring up the calendar for last week. We had news every single day. Monday starting off 10 o'clock news. Alright, here's Monday on a 15-minute chart. Up here is that daily SIBI that we were mentioning. And this is that daily sell side, that external range that I was looking for once we got an internal range tap. So I trade 10 to 11 and 2 to 3 p.m. silver bullet. So whenever I'm trading in the morning, I'm looking at what 9:30 does, you know, some kind of Judas swing. And as you can see at 9 o'clock candle, we're sweeping hourly buy side into this hourly SIBI below that daily internal range here. A nice wick here, rejecting. And in the 15-minute, as you can see at 9:30, that's what we dig up into. And then you can refine this to the 15-minute suspension block here. Volume imbalance with a SIBI. Wicks can do the damage. Bodies close inside of it. So that was the Judas swing. Let's check regular trading hours on Monday. Yep. Monday we gap up into that. So we gapped up into a premium. Now down to a 5-minute, I'm looking for an entry pattern. 9:30, bodies closed, respecting that rejection block. We're above midnight, and then we get a short here. Fair value gap just about equilibrium with a market structure shift after a liquidity raid at 9:30. So I went short here on Monday. You put your stop, candle 1. Then looking for London lows for about 2.5R. That's what I was looking for. Whenever I take a stop out in the morning session, I'll trade the afternoon, and that's what ended up happening. And you know, I'll take the fair value gap and extend that out in time for context in the PM session. As you can see, we're kind of using this as a natural support and resistance. And Monday we raid lunch highs here, sweep it at the beginning of our silver bullet session. We have a market structure shift fair value gap here, but it doesn't get filled. Close below our morning fair value gap. Look how the bodies respect it. Open, close down, wicks back into it one more time. Market structure shift with a fair value gap heading into the end of our silver bullet macro and the 250 310 macro. So we have a market structure shift. So I went short here, stop above the candle 1, and same objective. We were looking for those London lows. That was my bias the entire day. It just happened to be that the morning got stopped out, and it is what it is. Sometimes wrong is right. And then that was 2.3R. So get rid of those levels. That was Monday. Tuesday, I didn't have much hope in because we didn't have any like main news. We had 8:15 news. You know, main news to me is like 8:30, 10 o'clock, 9:45. If I go to last week, 8:30, 10, 10. These are the main events. Let's go back to this week. So Tuesday I didn't have much open, but ended up being one of the better days of the week. So again, hourly chart, Tuesday. It's a little bit of a tricky session because we touched the daily internal and we're touching, sell side liquidity here, sweeping both sides. That's why I like to wait until 10 to 11. Let the damage be done. As you can see, we're wicking both sides. And then 10 o'clock finally, that's the candle that was the move. And as you can see, we gap up again on Tuesday into that daily internal range overnight. And then I'll take yesterday's close to today's open and grade that. So working within this daily SIBI and opening range gap, that's a very 50-50 condition. I'll move that over. Okay. So at 9:30, we're touching that SIBI, but notice all the way until 10 o'clock, we're not really displacing lower ahead of our silver bullet window. And then we touch the upper quadrant of the opening range gap, sweeping sell side on an hourly chart. It's that sell side here, London low. We swept London low around the upper quadrant. And then at 10:30, we get a nice model long. See, usually I don't like longing when we have that big gap up, but if we touch the upper quadrant, then that gives me the permission, like, okay, I can take this long. So that's kind of how I weigh if we're in a premium array and like, yeah, we're in a premium, we're in a SIBI, gapping up on opening range gap. So swept London low, and then we're had this nice big 50-point-ish gap, so you can put your stop loss here. And this is where the grading of ICT's daily SIBIs really opened my eyes this week. You can see here's the midpoint. Look at the bodies, just using it as support and resistance. Here's the upper quadrant. The bodies gravitating towards these levels. And then, once we flip it here, Tuesday's open, works up inside this a little bit, colors outside the lines, closes back below, comes back up, touches that almost one more time, and then we close below the lower quadrant here, and then it's off to the races to Tuesday's AM low. So this helped me with my targets on Tuesday. Just looking for objectives around the midpoint of our daily SIBI, because we go to an hourly chart. We don't have any hourly drawn liquidities here. So that's where I'll go to the 15-minute regular trading hours. Tuesday, gap up, touch the upper quadrant, sweep sell side. Well, I don't really want 1.7R, so these buy sides with the upper quadrant really stood out to me, and that's what I ended up taking. So it looked like that, 2.4R. So that was Tuesday's trade. Wednesday, 10:30 news and 3 p.m. Wednesday, I thought was going to be a pretty good day because we had 10:30 news, which is in our morning silver bullet, and then 3 p.m., which is just after the afternoon, which could be a catalyst to deliver price, especially with Trump speaking, which he's been having a big impact on the market lately. All right. So Wednesday, as you can see, look at how the wicks are respecting that upper quadrant on the 15-minute chart. It really looks clean here. And then Wednesday we gap down. So we gap down into some kind of a discount. As you can see, working up inside the lower quadrant of the daily SIBI, wicking around these levels, no real displacement or entry during our AM session. So I'll go back to the 15-minute chart and get rid of the daily SIBI levels because we have an opening range gap here. So the previous day's close to the next day's open. And as you can see, we're filling in this opening range gap down. And then during the lunch session, we consolidate. And then ahead of our silver bullet session, we had a lunch raid. So if I go to regular trading hours, Wednesday. So we're filling in this opening range gap completely. Lunch chops around. We sweep this 1230 high. That's a lunch raid right here. Heading into our silver bullet, we have this short in the lower quadrant of the daily SIBI, so that gives us permission, like, okay, now we can, I'll redraw that actually. Here we touch the lower quadrant. See how we're chopping around the midpoint during lunch, and then beginning of our silver bullet, we wick up into the lower quadrant, have a market structure shift, the fair value gap, 2022 model short. This one was kind of choppy, and you'd consider this time distortion because we had 3 o'clock news, so they waited for Trump to speak to deliver this move. So short here around 2:30, chops around until the beginning of the 3 o'clock candle. Then Trump speaks, and then we close back below that. That's why you shouldn't close your position if we close above the fair value gap, because we still have this premium wick here. So you can pretty much grade everything. That's what makes ICT so interesting. This premium wick is a premium array. Look at the lower quadrants. Here we almost touched the midpoint of that wick. As long as we stay below the midpoint of that wick, we're still bearish. So if we close above the gap, that doesn't necessarily mean that the setup is going to fail. So that's why you have your stop loss here, and you just accept whatever happens. And then using the regular trading hour context, well, I can target AM session low for 2.3R. So that was Wednesday session. At this point, Wednesday we closed below that daily SIBI. So Thursday I was really looking for this sell side down here. Thursday had a massive gap down at 9:30 into that daily sell side that I wanted to see on Thursday. Thursday we had 8:30 orange news and 10:30 during our silver bullet. As you can see, midnight's up here. Overnight we had that run late in the early AM session around 7 o'clock, had this nice gap and then delivered to that. So at 9:30 we gap down into it, as you can see here, wicking into that sell side here, digging into it. 9:30 we displace, and then the first fair value gap after 9:30 I consider a first presentation fair value gap. So here we close below it and we're inverting it. So I'm watching the midpoint of that first presentation just to see if we could have set up shorts. We didn't get any displacement. Really looking for that daily external range beyond that. Let me see here. If I draw yesterday's close to today's open, see how we touched the lower quadrant. Remember how I said on Tuesday, like if we touch the upper or lower quadrant 0.25 or upper 0.25, then that's a continuation scenario where we could continue to seek lower if we got a setup short in here, seeking that sell side. But no setup on Thursday, even in the afternoon, no displacement. It is what it is. Whenever that happens, you just gotta accept it, take it to the chin, because all the levels I was looking for had already delivered pre-market, and that's out of my control. And then Friday. I had high hopes for the morning session. We had 9:45 news, 15 minutes before the silver bullet, and then 10 o'clock news. So at this point, I was really looking for that external range low to be tagged, and then I was really looking at like, okay, what below this could we seek? So grade this upper discount BISI. That sell side here is around the midpoint, so then next objective inside of that SIBI is the lower quadrant and full close. And as you can see, that's what happened here. Look at the hourly, lower quadrant, gap fill, wicks respecting it so far. So Friday didn't have much of a gap to work with. We actually gapped down, and same thing. So this would be another example of using the lower quadrant to continue short. So we touched the lower quadrant, almost touched the midpoint. We use this inverse fair value gap here as well. This is the upper quadrant. This is that daily sell side. And here's the midpoint and lower quadrant. So during our 10 to 11 silver bullet, we have this displacement in between the midpoint and the lower quadrant, and it is in premium. So I'll get rid of these quadrants, get rid of this daily SIBI, get rid of that daily sell side. So at this point, I'm asking myself, well, what can I target lower? We have this suspension block as I mentioned here. Then I'll go down to an hourly chart if it shows up. Here's that daily sell side, but I think I used the level one here because this sell side. So I had this premium short here. And put your stop candle 1, target that hourly sell side. Since we touched that lower quadrant, I just wanted to squeeze some shorts out of the market. Ended up getting stopped out. It is what it is. They wanted to raid this low, and then during London close after the silver bullet, they ran it back up to just a couple ticks shy of the midpoint of the opening range gap. It is what it is. They use that midpoint of the opening range gap for the PM session. As you can see here, didn't get a setup in the afternoon, had a lot of displacement lower, and then they were eventually reaching for that hourly sell side I mentioned here, ultimately aiming for this suspension block down here, or weekly BISI, I mean. So this is kind of where we're drawing to at the moment. Let's see. So just to review the week entirely. We had -1R Monday morning, and then 2.3R in the afternoon on Monday, using that gap up narrative, and then 2.3R we gapped up but respected the upper quadrant, so another 2.3R. Wednesday gapped lower and then had a complete gap fill, then a lunch trade into PM shorts for another 2.3. And then Thursday gap down, touched the lower quadrant but didn't get any setups lower. And then Friday we had the reverse of Tuesday, gap down, touched the lower quadrant, looking for shorts, continuation, and got stopped out. We had 9:45 and 10 o'clock news, A+ setup, 10:30 setup, nothing you can do there. And they just wanted to run it back up into the opening range gap before heading lower in the afternoon session. So for the week total, we had 5R, 5%. It's pretty good, all things considered. So yeah, I just want to do a quick weekly review and outlook, just to refresh you on the outlook, just looking for this daily BISI and this volume imbalance here. Previous week low, previous week high. Get rid of that, and we're fine at the daily chart. So we have this suspension block. Which I'll grade here. And then this suspension block as well. So kind of stuck in this range here, favoring shorts. Use these quadrants on the lower end and the upper end to help gauge your bias on a daily close basis for next week. If early next week, say Tuesday, Wednesday, we use this SIBI suspension block, here and we stay below the midpoint, then obviously we're going to seek lower prices. And this is my levels for next week. So good luck and good trading.